and which is so weird because I had to travel to London to see all the wild birds I otherwise
Oh,
wouldn't see, because obviously they are here, but because I don't, I'm not at this point. I didn't have this. I couldn't go to forest or somewhere to see them, or even the beaches I visited were quite. They didn't have a lot of wildlife on them.
welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I'm your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen. Welcome everybody back to Coffee and Geography, and I feel a bit like a Eurovision host when I say this. Come in, Tallinn. Tale pravas. Are you there, Helen?
I am. Hello, London.
So that's the one thing that connects us is Eurovision, of course. Estonia do pretty well in it, a lot better than the United Kingdom of
United
recent times.
Kingdom is rubbish, isn't it?
Just nil point, time and time
Yeah.
again. You folks who are listening outside of Europe, if you have no idea what Eurovision is, just look it up. It's crazy. It's fun and it's crazy. You should look it up. But we're not here to talk about Eurovision. We're here to talk to Helen Ilus, who is a wonderful, wonderful graphic designer. And I got in contact with Helen through Dan Raven Ellison, who was a guest in season 1, sorry. And so we're going to have a bit of a chat about that. So to introduce Helen is an independent graphic designer and aspiring map publisher who gets inspiration from nature. She has a small studio in Tallinn, Estonia, where she makes maps and tries to grow an indoor forest. Wow. She discovers her love for maps while she's traveling, and now she continues to travel through her maps and help other people connect with nature. Wow. Yeah, an
Yeah.
indoor forest. Have you tried mapping your indoor forest?
No, my indoor forest is looking actually really bare at the moment because all the leaves are gone. It's winter.
Of course.
So yeah, they're here, but it's just the yeah. Well, but I'm hoping that spring's coming soon, so I will have a full scale forest here soon.
Yeah, I mean, how's it been the seasons over there in Estonia? Because here in the UK, I mean, we've finally eventually got days in the east of England down to freezing and hovering around freezing, so around 0 degrees Celsius. Not really much colder than that, but it's almost winter has just not come.
Yeah, I've seen that. I'm seeing all these pictures from UK, and everybody's posting like the spring flowers in December, and it's just mad. But we actually had a really proper winter this year, and it's been a while. We've kind of had winters. There's been absolutely no snow. So this year, we had loads. We had too much. So yeah, it's been cold. It's been -20
Wow.
with lots of snow on the streets. So now it's all melting, so it's turned to ice. But yeah, it's been pretty good. Yeah.
So you said they're -20 degrees. Experienced that myself in Minnesota because my partner is from Minnesota, United States of America, where they have a climate, and I have experienced temperatures of down to -25 degrees Celsius. Cold.
How do you like it?
Um, it's not bad actually. It's very biting, so you've got to wrap up very warm. And I remember when my parents came and visited one winter. It's the first time I've ever been anywhere as typical Brits outside of like California, New York, or Florida, right? And like my dad, who is not really one for out and walking stuff like that, decided he would walk with my wife to the local cafe, and he wears glasses, and like
Oh yeah, the
in
steam out.
seconds
Yeah,
they were freezing over because of course all the condensation from his breath were hitting his glasses and
yeah.
freezing, and he couldn't see. So yeah, it's fine. I probably my wife misses it a lot,
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
get that in UK.
No, we certainly don't. No. So I guess even though you're there on the, the Gulf of Finland, and you've got quite a
Mm,
body of water around you, I
yeah.
guess therefore your climate's quite continental. I imagine. Then, if you get that cold
Um,
in the winter, and do you get very very hot in the summer?
well, we do. I mean, compared to UK, which is kind of more sort of mild all year
Mm,
around, we do have warmer summers. It can get up to 30. Last year was bonkers, but last year was,
yeah.
I mean, it's climate change. It's just, so it was really, really hot, 35 mostly, most. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's affecting us as it's affecting anywhere. It's been a cold winter, but generally it does get warmer. The sea used to ice over during the winters. Um, I don't think it happens that much anymore. So yeah,
That's really interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, because it's Eastern Europe is I don't think is not as studied or as appreciated as much as other parts of Europe, and and people to picture this. If you just look up Estonia on a map, you'll notice that actually it's surrounded on two sides. If you count the lake to the east, you almost three. So it's almost a peninsula, but not quite.
almost water.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
it's actually sticking out there into the Baltic Sea and the Gulf of Finland. So it's a really really interesting geographically, and I really would want to look up a bit more about that from a meteorological point of view. So, but let's go back to feeling a bit warm, and that's your drink. Have you got a
Oh
nice
yeah.
warm toasty drink there, Helen?
I do. I do. I am a coffee addict, and which is weird because I didn't drink coffee until my early 20s, and then I went to work and I started to drink coffee. So that's my go-to narcotics. I do. I've drank less recently, but less means about 3 cups a day. So I mean, I if I do less, I'm just sleepy all day long.
I think a lot of people listening will like kind of get it. We'll
Yeah.
identify with that, Helen. So do you have? Is there like a really recognizable global brand that you drink, or is it a very very is it an Eastern European one? What is it that you drink? What brand is it that you drink?
I've never really. I've always wanted to go to the real coffee shop and pick
Hmm.
something, and I have tasted good coffee, but I never really registered. I'm just, oh, this is good. This tastes wonderful. What is it? And I forget right away what it is, obviously. So this one is actually from our coffee machine here in my studio. We have a coffee machine downstairs. I just go there and take coffee. I had a look before, so it was called Vista, and it was certified sort of beans they pour in. So I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's pretty good coffee. But at home, and especially at the evenings when I don't want to have this proper, hardcore coffee, I drink instant coffee, and
Okay.
it's not it's not coffee, it's coffee drink. But I haven't found this anywhere else like in UK, but we do get here an Indian instant coffee, which I really like. And it's kind of it's the they used to have it in Soviet times and they still import it. It doesn't have any certifications. It's just it comes straight from India, but I had a look at once, and it seems to be sort of family business. So kind of local thing that just passes these big brands and just yeah. So I like this one. It's a quite yeah. It's a quite old one, but yeah, I haven't found it anywhere else. So
Oh, that's fascinating.
yeah.
Because yeah, India is. I mean, this is probably typical white British colonial talking here, but you only really think of India for its tea. You don't really think of India for its
Oh, they
coffee.
have coffee. They have instant coffee, and I have no idea how instant coffee is made. And it's if I buy one that's from a supermarket, it doesn't really taste anything. But I like this one. It reminds me India. I've been there. I've traveled there a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of nice to have these different things.
I'm going to have to investigate this because speaking to the wonderful Adil Hussain, the actor last season, he's got me hooked on Assam tea because he's from
Oh,
the Golpara region of India and where they grow Assam leaves. And I'm gonna think that I'm gonna investigate this and see if it can become a rival to this tea. I think so. I have to
yeah.
check it out because I'm not a coffee drinker, but I'm very willing to try out new things. Thank you for that insight, Helen. That's really good. You're living up to the podcast name of Coffee and Geography there. Fantastic. Right. So we've already had a little bit of a chat about where you are in Tallinn in
Yeah.
Estonia. But what we like to do, we like to talk a bit about kind of like how that formulates your identity as a person. So
Oh,
so this is an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about, have you been in the city all your life, or have you moved around a bit? Have you lived in Estonia all the time? And kind of like how has that formed Helen the person? And I suppose we can move on a bit later and talk about maybe is where you are right now like influenced your creativeness perhaps.
yeah. Um, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always, I mostly lived in a city. I grew up in a city in Tallinn. Um, so, um, but I always have had before. I've always had this romantic idea that I would love to live in a country, and it's kind of it's always like this. I think. Um, uh, I I think I'm very much influenced by having this urban environment around me most of my life, and at the same time, it's really weird that although the countryside is more open, I feel that in a way, especially if you're not driving, and I'm not driving, you are more free in a city to explore the open spaces, which I've kind of have found. I've traveled actually around the world, but I had the same problem as not a driver, that in the cities, in the urban environments, you usually can get around quite easily. And we used to, even when I was a child and young person, we used to walk everywhere, and the public transport here is pretty good. I It's quite a green city, I would say. It's getting less so all the time, and which is unfortunate. But I still think we have quite a few open spaces, and we used to explore these a lot. And when I started, I was very into photography in my sort of late teens, and I got the camera, and this gave me a reason to walk around. It's not really done here as much as it's done in UK. So I was doing this, and it was a bit weird if you just wanted to walk around. So I got a camera, so I had a reason. And later on, when I had this UK experience, I just realized, oh, actually, people do this as a hobby. So this was a revelation for me. And
Wow.
there are people here who are hiking, but that's a bit different than walking. So um, yeah, definitely. Um, and in Estonia, the population density, well, it's obviously higher in the cities, and in Tallinn we have 500,000 people, but in all over Estonia we have about million 200,000, I think. And which is, we do have quite a lot of open space, but I wasn't really able to get there in a way. So my experience mostly evolved around the cities and city open spaces. Um, and then when I kind of have had more opportunity, I just thought that even as a creative person, even if I'm romanticizing the countryside and everything, I think my roots are in the city and then in the green spaces and all that, and which kind of um, also is based on my work right now. And I kind of made a circle. I've lived in the countryside for a little while. I lived in rural Ireland for about a half year. And again, I felt that although you have all these open space, beautiful spaces, because I'm not a driver, I was limited with my choices, and you don't have a public transport. Um, and and this is also UK was quite good because trains go pretty much anywhere, and you can quite easily go to the national parks or just go out from London. Whereas in some other countries have kind of had to um, yeah, I mean, right now I would really love to go to a local national park, and it's almost impossible to go on a public transport. So, which is unfortunate because because we're trying to kind of tune down all the car traffic, and then we should have a really good public transport network when we trying to do that.
You know, on one hand, I totally agree with you. It's like I want to be able to access all these spaces, you know, and it's an interesting insight that you say that actually, compared to your own experience, that the UK's public transport system, which a lot of people here moan about, is actually not too bad. Don't get me started on the trains though. But it's interesting that I could actually get to, for example, the Yorkshire Dales from here, just outside of Norwich. So I could get on a train. I could get over to the line that goes up to Liverpool Lime Street, and then I can get on local buses, and I could probably, with a bit of difficulty, but I could do it. I can get into the village of Malham in the Yorkshire Dales eventually. But yeah, but I'm thinking the paradox is, but these spaces are beautiful and lovely and romanticized because of the lack of human invasion, if you like. So if
Mm.
public transport was to expand into these areas, would it take away from what draws people in? That's the paradox. So yeah, it's I think that's a debate for another day, and I think teachers will probably have that debate with their students quite a lot to say, well, should we be accessing these places, or should we be leaving them as almost pseudo wildernesses?
Well, if you're thinking about that, if you're going with a car and there's so many people going on a car right now, so these places are already full. But if you would have a really good option to go on a really nice public transport, like a park bus or something, and when you're going on a car, you usually have to come back. And what I did this summer, I did coastal walks. And I did in the area where the public transport is really good. So I stopped. I went off. I did about 10 kilometers. Really lovely beaches, everything, and I got on back on the bus, and I didn't have to. If I couldn't do this on a when if I would go with a car. So
That's a good
it's
point.
it's not
Yeah.
about increasing traffic in these places, but increasing walking, cycling, active travel, and having less cars and have the need to be car bound. And in Estonia, we are so car bound at the moment, and it's getting worse all the time. So yeah, that's my concern. Um, that we could have this really lovely access somehow, I think.
And that's another argument, is it's the accessibility as well, because not everybody owns a car. Those who don't own a car are likely to be people who traditionally do not access these green spaces and need to access these green spaces, and so yeah, so I appreciate that. I missed that bit of the argument out, of course, a bit earlier. But another example that comes to mind here in the county of Norfolk is you've got, for example, the coastal hopper. So you could go to, you can alight in Sheringham or Cromer, the coastal towns there, and then you've got a bus that runs the whole length of the Norfolk coast called the Coastal Hopper, and it basically just runs the whole of the main road along the coast, the A149, and you can jump on and off the bus, and so you and my wife and I actually did do that once. You know, we went, took the train, and then we just got on the bus, jumped off the bus, walked around the marshes. And you are absolutely right, and it was a different experience than to just jumping in the car, finding a parking space or parking on a
Yeah.
verge, because which is terrible for the local environment, and of course all your carbon emissions and everything like that. So yeah, it's, I think, increasing public transport to these areas, but as a way that dissuades people from using the car, encourages people to use
Yeah.
the public transport, is perhaps a net benefit. But as I say, this is a very interesting debate that I
Far
think,
to go. Yeah.
yeah, and it gets done quite a fair bit actually in geography classrooms, no doubt, here in the United Kingdom. So, but I'm going to go. This is a perfect segue though to your work, because you were talking
Ah.
about,
Yeah.
you're walking around in photography and you like, you know, the structure of cities, and one of the things that you do with your creative work is mapping, for example. And one thing, and I'm going to start with this because it is incredible, and this is the work I came across to get connected with you. But you've done other pieces of work which please do mention, and that is when I was speaking to Daniel Raven Ellison last year about the London National Park City, and we were talking about the campaign and how it grew from basically just a thought experiment to be an actual real thing. One of the things which was very, very well, it was praised, and it was like a symbol of the of the of the campaign. Really, was a map that you created called the Green Ground map.
It was, yeah, it was one of the maps, one of the two
Yeah,
maps that was, yeah, and the other one was urban good map, the big, and yeah.
I love it because, for a start, obviously you will know this, Helen, but for people who are people, a lot of people are aware of the London Underground map, because
Yeah.
it's not just a logistical tool, it's not just a planning tool, it is a piece of art. That diagrammatic, very straight, even the font and everything, and the colors, and a lot of public transport systems in other countries, of course, based their maps on the London Underground map. So they took their inspiration from it, and you've taken that and gone one step further. And so describe it to people. So what is this map like, and kind of like what was your inspiration for this map?
Okay, so the green ground map, if you imagine a tube map, but it's 10 times as busier. And I know lots of people are already saying that the tube map is busy, but the green ground
Yeah.
map is 10 times as that. And instead of stations, it connects parks and open spaces, and it attempts to connect them via walking and cycling, active travel. Um, so you have this just a very big network that looks like a tube network, but is actually active travel network. And it currently covers 800 open spaces in London, and that's actually um, just some of them. There's over 3,000, which was something I had no idea when I started. And the first map I made had about 70, and 70 was the ones I was aware of.
Right.
All the
Okay.
bigger ones, I even had a B in all of them, I think. But um, but it was my understanding of this of London, Green London at this point, and I started adding to it. And people suggested more parks, and they added and they added, and it's grown to this huge network that's expand actually outside London. It connects with some of the walking routes like South Downs Way. Is it North Downs? Yeah, it's kind of the southern part is in Surrey, um, and up to Windsor. So it's getting quite big, but it's attempting to show that London is not only streets, it's not only public transport or metro or tube. It can be seen through natural features. So the lines and the best lines are usually the rivers and the canals. Um, so, and the other ones are maybe thematic lines, and some are the official walking routes, like uh, Capital uh, Capital Trail, isn't it? And the Loop are the official walking routes, and some I've just made up for fun. But the whole idea is that when I talked about loving nature, loving photography, and being in my late teens, and the first time I went to London, um, it was my I really wanted to see London. I traveled on my own. It was my first solo travel, and my first night when I was there, I went to Kensington Park, and the next morning as well. And I was stunned by the wildlife I saw, and which is so weird because I had to travel to London to see all the wild birds I otherwise
Oh.
wouldn't see, because obviously they are here, but because I don't, I'm not at this point. I didn't have this. I couldn't go to forest or somewhere to see them, or even the beaches I visited were quite. They didn't have a lot of wildlife on them, so I was just walking around making photos, and I was thrilled. And even the squirrels, I know they're pests, but it was just they made me so happy. And I just remember this, and this was my first sort of experience, and it grew afterwards when I had a chance to visit London more, and eventually live there. I just always seeked out these spaces, and yeah. So it's for me, um, when I saw a couple of years ago, I was just looking for that something I would like, and had a design element on it, and something I could do with my skills. And I saw this national park city idea, and I was thinking, oh, I really like that. This is great. And I put a couple of ideas out, and they shared it and they liked it. I was like, oh, okay. So this is something. This is a platform I could actually exhibit something and get few likes. And I was hoping to get 4 likes, and then I was like, oh, I got 10 likes, and there was this graphic that got 60. I was like, oh wow, that's
Whoops.
wonderful. And then I put the metro style, the tube map style map out, and it got 400 likes.
Wow.
And then I was like,
Wow.
okay, I'm on to something. This is good, and I like this, so I'm just going to see how it goes.
It's as someone I grew up as a kid, um, loving the London Underground and London
Yeah.
Underground map, because I'm originally from a town, a London new town called Harlow in Essex, which is about a 10-minute drive away from Epping. So, and that, which is the nearest tube station, right at the end of the Central Line. So, and I geeked, and I used to have a wooden train. Well, I didn't have a wooden train set. My cousins had a wooden train set, who lived in North Weald at the time, which was further down the Central Line on a temporary line. And so every time I used to go and visit my cousins, I used to ask to borrow their wooden train set, bring it home, and I would do a mock up of the Central Line using the train set, right?
Ah,
With all the little, and
yeah,
on piece of paper, I'd do all the little tube things. So I'd do Epping, Dayton Boys, Loughton, Debden.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got those two the wrong way around, but anyway, Woodford, and then going all the way down the line. And I noticed that on your map, so the Central Line is almost, but not quite, the dark green, which you have called City, the City Line. And so, which starts off in
Yeah,
Epping Forest, yeah, and then you walk 2.3 miles to the next stop, which is which, and then another 1.2 miles, and you got Chingford Plain, and you got Whitehall Plain, and you could go to Mansfield Park from there, and then you got Higham Parks Lake, and then the Circle, Walthamstow Wetlands, Chestnuts Field, and then after about a good half a day's walk, then you're in Tottenham, and the recreational ground, the Lordship Recreational Ground, Bruce Castle Park. So yeah, and it's just, So when I saw this, and it just like my love for geography, my love for maps, my love of the London Underground, I was just like, I just spent so much time on this, and it's a thing of beauty. And the question I really want to ask you as well, Helen, is this is the thing I can't get my head around, because geographically, I tried making my own map as a kid, and from my imagination, and I just could not get the spatial like dimensions right, because if I put something too far one way or the other, it was like it'd be way too far north, way too far south. Why? So it must have been like a massive problem solving exercise for you as well, because you thought, well, if I put that there, but actually that place is too far west compared to this place, or this place is too far. Do you just make it fit? Does it really matter? I mean, how did you
Actually,
go through that process?
yeah. I mean, it's that simple. It's so simple. I just do this on Google Maps. If you think of a layer
Oh
on Google Maps, that's it. Because it is actually geographically accurate, whereas a tube map obviously is not.
no,
And
yeah,
this is why Harry Beck's map has, it's more of a design. There's more. I mean, the ideas he had a quite limited space. It didn't matter because, I mean, when you're on a tube, you just go to the next station. It doesn't matter how far it is exactly. But lots of people actually using this for walking, and I did. When I moved to London first, I used the tube map, and you think that, okay, I'm just going to go there, and then you just realize, oh, right, this is a massive distance between these. So the green ground map actually is accurate. I mean, it's based on Google Maps, and I do have to adjust some of the points, obviously, because if it gets very busy somewhere, I just move this a little bit. But generally, this is how it looks, and this is where these green spaces are. And one idea was to bring this underground to overground, because I love tube and I do tube all the time. I think it's brilliant invention. But if you spend so much time under the ground, it has quite a bad air quality. I mean, if we've heard now that the particles and everything, that's especially in the lowest ones, that's pretty
yeah,
bad. And if you're
yeah.
spending lots of time there, it's not healthy. So I think the next step we need to look is not to expand the tube map, but try to bring these trains on the ground again. I love
Mm,
trams, and I think trams are great in invention, and in Tallinn we have there's trams in few UK cities. Edinburgh in Scotland
yeah,
has
Manchester.
trams. Yeah, I think Nottingham probably. I'm not. Yeah. So I really like them, and London used to have trams as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
up here
it's
in Norwich as well. But they took them out for the car, of course, as did most
yeah,
places.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that was one of the things. Also, just trying to sort of bring this map and see if this is something that could be now in this century. Could this happen?
yeah.
This is idea, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, you've got a lot of praise, a lot of positive reviews, and positive critical appraisal for what you've done. It's amazing. And hi, folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast. Simply liking, sharing, rating, and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out. And at the end of our chat, you can definitely shout out your website, because on your website
Mm,
you've got your designs for the Sheffield Green Ground, for the
right.
Bristol Green Ground, and Edinburgh. So, um, can you do one? Have you got plans for one for Norwich? Maybe, pretty please.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, I've been thinking about that because I really want to. It's yeah, quite near the coast, isn't it?
It's, let's see, we're about a 15 to 20 minute drive away from the and we got,
Yeah,
of course, we got the Norfolk Broads. So we got the Norfolk
yeah, exactly.
Broads, which comes into Eastern Norwich?
Yeah, I've been really wanting to visit for a while, but obviously I haven't traveled for a few years. This was the next thing I wanted to do,
Mm.
just to take the train and go for a coastal walk and come to Norwich as well. But yeah, definitely. And who knows? Maybe they commission it.
Ooh.
That would be
Well,
nice.
if that ever happens, Helen, get
Yes,
in touch. We can
I
we'll
will.
walk a little bit together. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I definitely
Yes.
have a coffee.
Yes. That sounds brilliant. Yeah, and on that webpage you've got as well, you've got which is absolutely fantastic, as you've got linked the green ground maps and Dan Raven Ellison's latest project, which is the Slow Ways, which is great because
Mm,
then they're all integrating into each other. And it looks
mm.
like there's is it live now, or is there an app being designed that allows people to plot their route? I mean, this is something new that I've come across. There's lots of screenshots of an app called Green My Way.
No, this was, I think, yeah, you're looking at the blog, and this was something I just
Hmm.
did for fun as
Oh,
well.
I
It's
see. It's a
just trying to,
concept.
it was a really a UX project for me, but just trying to, so I think the app would be great because lots of people asking for it, but
Yes.
obviously it does take quite a lot of resources,
Hmm.
which is probably not going to happen this year. But I'm taking steps towards it, and I think app would be quite a good resource. The big difference between Green Ground Map and Slowways, for example, is that they have huge network of people involved, the
Hmm.
volunteers who's helping to do the routes and checking them. So this community um, spirit um, and the Green Girl Map right now is pretty much me on doing it on my own. Um, it's more of the graphic design project, and yeah, so we'll see how it's going to evolve. But at the moment, it seems that few cities are interested of having their own, and maybe in a couple of years we'll have an app as well. So,
Wow, that's amazing. And if you're listening to this, anybody, and you've got an ear of the council, or the city council, or maybe you're listening yourself, here you go. Helen will be giving her contact details a bit later on. Because one thing this podcast loves to do is loves to connect people, which is fantastic. Yeah, and it's so. This is just this is an amazing example of geography, arts, spatial data. GIS just coming together in such a beautiful, beautiful, functional way that can enhance people's experience of an area, or even their local area where they haven't really. They look at this, they're thinking, "My goodness, I can actually spend just a morning and I could walk to these places. And I didn't know I could do that." So, Helen, it's fantastic work, and you deserve all the praise that you've been getting for it, and. So yeah, and I'm really, really looking forward to what you come up with in future. But there is something else that you like making, which I want you to talk about. So this is spilling the beans now, Helen, because
oh yeah.
yeah, you say you like a bit of baking, and you particularly
Hmm.
like baking ciabattas.
Yes.
So you say they're relatively easy to make with a couple of
Mm.
ingredients, and it's the simple pleasures. So give us give us folks who love a little bit of cooking, a little bit of baking, about your top tips for a ciabatta.
How to about that? I think it's the top tip is probably getting it in an oven in a really hot oven and baking it really quickly. I think 10 or 12 minutes, even maybe 15. But um, so lots of people do like baking, obviously. So not that surprising, perhaps, but I'm really fascinated the simpleness of the bread, and I'm really fascinated of the simple food and something we could and should have plenty, but somehow we don't. And if you're thinking, and something like ciabatta, it takes only about 4 ingredients. You have flour, you have yeast, water, and the salt, and that's it. And then there's a work involved, and it takes the whole process takes about maybe 2.5 hours. And I'm usually skipping a couple of. I usually try to just get it quicker because I'm not really. I don't want to bake a bread for 3 days. I think that's mad.
Yes.
But but that's the thing. We used to bake our own bread, and everybody did that. It was delicious, and it is, and it's nutritious. And I'm eating a couple of those slices, and I feel full. And I get the supermarket loaf, and I eat 4 of them slices, and it doesn't fill me up, and because obviously it probably doesn't have flour, lots of flour in it, and that's what I'm really fascinated about. That we live in a era of plenty, and in other ways we're starving because we've lost this nutrition in food.
Yeah.
And and I'm very interested about looking into foods that are easy to make, are nutritious, what we can do at home, and especially in the Western cultures now. Even if something like flour is quite cheap, we're so busy, we don't have this time anymore. So the time cost is something we have to take account.
Yeah. Well, to
Um,
interject there, Helen, I don't know if it happened in Estonia, but here in the United Kingdom, when the first lockdown happened because of
mm,
coronavirus, the
yeah,
first thing to fly off the shelves was flour. Yeah, no, you could not find flour for love or money here in the supermarkets. People it's like, well, I'm going to be home. I might as well buy up the flour and I'm going to
did you
bake
bet?
stuff. So yeah, my wife does. My
Oh,
wife's she makes her own bread from her mother's recipe. Well, her great aunt Sig's recipe makes her own bread, which is really really lovely, which my late mother-in-law used to make. And yeah, she does like a bit of baking. She's quite happy to turn and say to my kids or to me, like, do you fancy something? You know, we just fancy making a cake. I was like, okay. But with ciabattas, Helen, the my wife actually, we got this lovely ciabatta stick from the local bakery, and we just what we just sliced it up. We had a bit of cream cheese on top of it, and you were saying about the getting something a bit more nutritious, a bit more fulfilling, a bit
yeah,
more of that
yeah,
kind of thing. That is that we're lucky to have our own quote unquote orchard in the garden. So we've got at least 5 trees. We've got a bay tree, we've got a cherry tree, we've got 2 plum trees, we've got a pear tree, and we've got an apple tree. So we've made chutney. So ciabatta bread with a little bit of cream cheese and a dollop of chutney. Oh my goodness. It's great. Love it. Yeah. So I'm totally with you on that.
yeah. So I think everybody should bake their own bread. I think if we would get there, yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
all culture. If you're thinking, uh, it's really simple, and all cultures have their own take on it. And you have flatbreads, you have brown breads. With Estonia, we have a lot of brown breads, and so there's this one thing that around the world has so many different inventive ways of making. So yeah, I think it would be great to I don't know, try to make them all, eat them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? You're not gonna burn your house down, people. Give it
Mm,
a go.
yes.
One more thing to do, Helen, before we finish off, is I'm actually going to play on your green ground map actually
Oh.
for a bit of jog on,
Oh.
which
Okay.
is so for jogging, which is well, it's not 5 random topics this time because I've actually taken them from your map, right, from your map.
Oh my god, I
So
should
it's
know
actually
this then.
5 topics based on the lines of your map, right? So and the way it works for everybody who hasn't heard this before is that Helen's got 5 topics that she can talk about just very very briefly. It could be maybe an experience she's had or just an opinion, just for 60 seconds or so. Or if she doesn't like the sound of that topic, she can pass by saying take a hike. But you can only pass twice, so you've got to talk about 3 of these things. Right, okay, so here are the 5 topics, and they're based on your lines of your green ground map, right, of London. So the first topic is royals and regents. So the upper echelons of society. Do you want to talk about royals and regents, or do you take a hike and skip it?
I'm gonna take a hike on this one.
Okay. The second topic is and you must have named this line after the River Lee, which runs from which the Stort in Harlow connects to, is a tributary of the River Lee that goes into the Thames.
Mhm.
But Lee, as in, yeah, it could be the name of the river, or it could be an open meadow, an open space, an open field. So, do you have any thoughts on that kind of landscape?
Um, I, I have a thought about Lee itself,
Okay,
because the
go for it.
river.
Of the River Lee.
Yeah, we again, when I moved to London, I think I had a very everybody knows Thames, of course, and this is where I mostly walked. And I lived in Bermondsey, so I mostly walked around central London, probably Southwark and this area. And I didn't really didn't have any idea that London would have so many rivers, because there a lot of them are hidden, and especially they do come up in some spaces, but especially in central London, I think most of the rivers have been just paved over. So we had this at work. We had this group of people who were hiking, and every weekend we would go somewhere, and we were training for this event of 100-kilometer hike. And the guys I was walking with, so I was mostly, they were map readers, I was mostly just tagging along. And we had we did walk um, along the Lee, and it was at some parts of it did look like a countryside. It was beautiful. I have very good memories of that. It was a sort of spring, summertime, and yeah, and I love it. I love it. I think it's a great space, and it's a great line to walk as well.
Yeah. So River Lee, and there's a lot of history along it. You've got a lot of green space along it. You've got the Greenway along it. You've got a lot of geography teachers will recognise it as the case study for when the development of the London Olympics. There was a lot of redevelopment around the River Lee. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
fascinating tributary of the Thames. And I would strongly recommend anybody, if you're unaware of A, how big the Thames drainage basin is, and B, how extensive, how dense it is, then you can find very, very good hydrological maps of the Thames drainage basin, and I'll probably put a couple of links in the description. So, right, that's fantastic. So that's two topics. We've got two more to talk about. So the first one, the third one is because you've got a line called bee. So I thought bees.
Yeah,
So
bees. All
you want
right.
to talk about bees, or
I do want
I'll
to talk
take
about bees. Yes, I do want to talk about bees,
go
because
for it.
I want to talk about the bees and uh, bugs, and I mean generally in urban space. I used to see, even in Tallinn, we used to have lots of bees. I mean, I don't see them anymore, and that's the problem everywhere. And
Yeah.
obviously, the bee line on the London map is based on the Tickle. Well, right. So this based on a work of the GIGL, and the line itself is taken from that Tickle app, and it's connecting the sort of flowery spaces in London from north to south. So you have this line, so the like um, fog line
Mm.
um, through the city, and we have something similar here as well in Tallinn, but what really, and I think it's happening in London as well, and especially this summer when it was so dry, and the council still mowed all the grass,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all the where I live, we have these. Um, I mean, what happened was you have these lots of these the yellow flowers, the fluffy ones, the dandelions, and they think of them as weeds, and they just mow them, and they're beautiful. And after that, you just have this scorched grass, And I
Mm,
think all these beeline projects are absolutely great, but all the cities should be a beeline
yeah.
project, and everywhere should be these wilder spaces where the bees and other insects could um, could hang out. So so that's really, and I mean the insects in the city, we used to have so many, and I don't see them anymore in the summer.
It is a tragedy. We've stopped mowing our lawn in the garden now because
Yeah,
we want as many wildflowers and actual weeds to grow, through the flowering season, so the bees can get what they need, and then once they've finished, then we will tidy up the garden. But and then the same with the leaves. We don't rake the leaves, put them in the brown
yeah,
bin anymore. We mulch them, and we put them. In fact, what we've been doing, we've been actually putting them, raking them to the side underneath the orchard trees, so they will decay, and that biomass and that matter will just go back, and it
yeah,
actually will feed the
exactly.
fruit trees.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
um and anything we prune, we stick along the fence for hibernating animals. So we're trying our best to kind of create a ecosystem in our garden. And actually, it's in a sense, it's less work because I'm not mowing the lawn as much. I'm not having to. So it's bizarre. It's a bit of lazy eco, environmentally kind of practice. Right. So that's really, so the beeline part. We're gonna have to put that one in the link in there as well. There's two more topics. You've got cranes, because you've got a line that says crane. Now is that crane to do with the bird, or is it to do with the amount of urban development taking place? So you've got loads of cranes. So what one was that?
it's actually the river, I think,
The
isn't
River
it?
Crane. Oh, okay. Now, see, my ignorance, I did not know that there was the River Crane as part of the River Thames. Well, do you want to talk about cranes? Because you've already talked about
I
rivers.
Yeah, I
So
think I'm gonna take a hike on
take a
this
hike.
one.
All right, the
Yeah,
last
because
one.
I haven't visited. I would love to, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
stuck here for
Okay.
now. Yeah,
Well,
last
there you
one. I
go.
have to take
Kit, you
this.
didn't know? There's a River Crane. Right. Okay. The last one is, well, it's just a shape, because this is what you named it. It's loop, based on the
Mm,
London Loop.
yeah,
But yeah, the fifth quote unquote random topic is loops. So circular
loops,
things. So
loops.
what?
Okay.
Give us your opinion on loops, or
I
something
think
geographical about loops.
loops are pretty good. Loops are with the they're circles. You have. Do I like loops more than lines? I don't know, because
Ooh.
I think but actually my lines probably do make loops eventually, because if you look at the Greenland map as well, it's one big loop made of lines. So I'm pretty fond of loops generally, I think, because if you have something that ties the lines together, otherwise you'll just end up at the end of the line and you just now what? So so that's why I have loops, that you always, if you end up at the end of the line, you can always, turn to right or left and
Yeah.
just keep going. Whereas that might not be possible with the tube map.
Yeah. All
You might
change,
have to come
please.
back. Yes. So yeah,
Yeah, you do
generally
have quite a
very.
fair loops. Yeah,
I do.
you've
I
got.
do.
There's that little triangular one that you've got, like in the northwest, where it goes through Totteridge Fields, Darlands Lake Reservoir, and then it
There was
goes along
one.
the
Yeah.
Dollis Valley Greenwalk back around to Brook Farm. So yeah, you got even little loops within loops there, which is pretty cool.
Yes. Yes. I did have one triangle, but I think it's now made it to loop. So.
Mm,
Mm. It's
there you
because
go.
loop just looked a little better, I thought.
Yeah,
It's
and
kind of,
also if you're gonna
yeah,
go for your hour hike, hour walk, or 2 hour walk or something, and you're not going out and coming back and seeing the same sort of things, or checking or seeing things that you might have missed, but you've got a nice little one way kind of experience there. So yeah, loop. I love a loop. All right, fantastic, Helen. So we're coming to the end of our chat, and now's the time, of course, to link you to our previous guest. So last week I spoke to Professor James Cheshire, who is a who works at the University College London as spatial analysis and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, and he recently wrote a book called Atlas of the Invisible with Oliver Roberti. It's so good. I don't mind giving that a plug because I, amongst a couple of others, wrote some educational material for it. So I'm happy to give that a plug. But he has come up with the word connections for you, which is like perfect. Which is like perfect because I'm like, because of course, I always know who the next guest is going to be. So when James said connections, I was like, this could you not have come up with like a more appropriate word for Helen? Right. So Helen, what it is, but because the way this works is that you don't have to talk about the connections on your maps or anything like that. You can talk about the word connections in any way, shape, or form you wish. So it could be a personal thing, could be a geographical thing, no matter what. The only thing is you've only got 30 seconds. So,
should I start now?
So you start when you're ready, and I will tell you when the time is up.
Okay. I'm going to talk about my map. So 30 seconds, connections, starting now. The connected green spaces are very, very important, and that's what the London Green Ground Map wants to do. So they wouldn't feel like an island for the wildlife, for the people. So you would have to cross, this grey pavement desert to get to the next one. They should be connected in a pleasant green way. So and also because they would feel stronger when they're connected, and because you have big
There's your 30
parks.
seconds.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I know, it goes so quick, doesn't it?
I know.
What was you gonna say then about having equal parts and whatnot?
Well, I was going to say that some parks are huge, others were small. So but because if I'm giving them a dot, they're all the same size in a way. So they kind of, I want them to sort of feel equally important, no matter what the size.
Amazing. Oh, wow. All these little nuances about this map, which just, Helen, we could talk about this for hours.
Oh,
But
right, let's do.
yeah, it's so fascinating, and we have spent a lot of time talking about the Green Ground Map, but it's been so worth it. Okay, Helen. So before I forget, sometimes I forget this. I have to go like get the guest back and say, "Oh, I forgot to do this," but I remember now. Your word, Helen, for the following guest. So it could be any word you like. It could be related to what we've discussed, or it can be something completely random, entirely up to you. Something that you would like the next guest to try and link to the world of geography or geographical processes or something.
Yes, I knew this from the beginning, and this is something I'm really passionate about. And it's not only about the parks, but generally, the world is openness.
Openness, love it.
Yes.
Openness.
So I'm not going to expand on this. I think the next person will do that.
The next person.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So, folks listening, and while you're waiting for next week's episode, have a little think of openness and how that may link to geography or our life's processes. Well, Helen, this has been delightful, really delightful. So now you need to. I've been singing your praises, but now's the time for you to kind of put yourself out there. So, chance for you to give any shout outs and to tell us about your social media accounts and your website.
Right. First of all, I want to thank. I want to thank my audience, but I really want to thank everybody who have supported this project by either buying a map or donating or sharing, because it is an independent project and it's the only way it can survive and expand. So if you'd like to get your own green ground map, you can always go to my shop. It's helenilus.com/shop. You can also, if you're just thinking about it, want to browse around, there's also free maps available. So you can actually have a look and then decide if you want this or not. So everybody has an option to get their green ground map.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
I know what I'm going to ask for my next birthday. So where can we? So you've mentioned your website there, Helen. So and where? Because I think you've got a Twitter account as well.
Yeah, I'm quite active on Twitter, so it's also at Helen Ilus in Twitter and Instagram. In Instagram, I've just adopted a cat, a rescue cat, so there will be lots of cat pictures for a while, but I will post some graphic design content as well. So.
Get a bit of both. Get a bit of both.
A little bit of both, yes.
Oh, well, Helen, I've really enjoyed our chat today. It's been lovely to meet you. And remember, that open invitation. If you're here in East Anglia or here in the county of Norfolk, let's go walking together.
Oh, let's go for a coffee. Certainly.
We'll go for a coffee.
Love talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.